mimi nasukuma rais na shilingi milioni 2.
It is one of the most common sins in Kenyan politics. And also, it is one of the most expensive mistakes Kenyans continue to make.
It is not the first time Nyaribari Chache Member of Parliament Zahiri Janda has been seen openly distributing money to thousands of residents in his constituency, a move that has angered some Kenyans.
Political handouts have become so normalized that many Kenyans barely question them. Cash is handed out openly in markets, at rallies, in churches, often without explanation of where it comes from. Political contenders have established financial handouts as one of the most reliable ways of winning public approval. But the source of this money is often unknown and the cost is even higher. Because once the cash is received, voters often forget what the leaders were elected to do. Politicians describe these handouts as empowerment, others describe them as helping the church. The term handout has become political language, used to describe cash given directly to individuals or groups, from 5,000 to Mama Mboga to millions donated to churches. But the question remains, do handouts influence election? And how did Kenya get here? To understand the politics of handouts in Kenya, we have to go back long before elections, long before independence. In the pre-colonial Kenya, handouts were not about elections, but they did shape expectations around leadership. Many communities operated systems where influence was built through redistribution rather than accumulation. Leaders gained authority through sharing livestock, providing protection, hosting communal feasts, and providing food during famine. Among the Agikuyu, landowners often hosted landless families in exchange for labor and loyalty. Among the Maasai, elders controlled cattle and redistributed them to strengthen clan cohesion and loyalty. This system by the Maasai also fueled conflicts, including long-standing tensions with neighboring communities like the Kikuyu. These were not bribes, they were social contracts. But they planted a powerful idea. Leadership comes with material generosity. Then came colonial rule. Through laws such as the Land Acquisition Act of 1894, the Crown Lands Ordinance of 1902 and 1915, and the Kenya Native Areas Ordinance of 1926, British authorities violently displaced African communities and transferred fertile land to white settlers and corporations, some under 999-year leases. And yes, 999 years means that some still exist legally today. But colonial power did not exist through force alone. It also relied on handouts. The British created and empowered chiefs to collect taxes, enforce labor, and maintain order. These chiefs were rewarded with cash stipends, food rations, land privileges, and some with uniforms. Some chiefs even helped identify strategic locations before armed conflict. Others helped reward loyal families with land and benefits. Colonial handouts also included tax exemptions, jobs on settler farms, and travel passes. Ethnicity became politicized with communities competing for colonial rewards. The strategy of divide and reward was later to be adopted by Kenya's independent political elite. 1963. Kenya gained independence and Jomo Kenyatta became the country's first president. Handouts did not disappear. They were repackaged and institutionalized. While the person in power took a large vast of land, those closest to him benefited a lot. Let's look at some of them. Mbiyo Koinange, Kenyatta's brother-in-law and close confidant, accumulated vast tracts of land from Mau Narok to Kiambu. Geoffrey Karidhi, head of civil service and secretary to the cabinet, also benefited enormously, acquiring coffee farms in Kiambu and prime land in Upper Hill. Additionally, development became personalized. MPs were now the bridge between citizens and schools, roads, health centers, and even harambes. Kenyans learned to vote not based on policy, but on proximity to power. The narrative was born: vote for him because he built a school. President Moi took handout politics to a new level. Facing pressure from the return of multi-party politics in 1992, Moi needed a survival strategy. According to Lin Jiru, then a key intelligence insider, they requested many millions from Moi to shape the election outcome. That money was allegedly used to order posters about Kenneth Matiba's candidacy without his knowledge, printed by a government printer. and also hire youths to distribute those posters nationwide to create an illusion of support. They also used the money to pay prominent musicians to compose songs praising Matiba, again to create a false perception of grassroots backing. They also paid for buses and crowds to welcome Matiba back from London, portraying regional support that wasn't organically that strong. This plan was intended to confuse and divide the opposition, notably Matiba and Kibaki, to assist in Moi's re-election. They also paid politicians. Linjiru said they approached Martin Shikuku and paid him to organize support, steer party affiliations, and influence messaging in key regions, again using money to shape political outcomes. Handouts were no longer generosity, they were political weapons. At the same time, Moi expanded paternalistic giving. Relief food, school milk which was called Maziwa ya Nyayo, and donations timed with presidential tours. Introduced in 1979, Maziwa ya Nyayo branded Moi as the father of the nation, turning welfare into political imagery. Humanitarian aid became loyalty currency. When Mwai Kibaki took power in 2002,
Mwai Kibaki, naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu wa Jamhuri ya Kenya.
Many Kenyans believed the era of patronage politics would finally end, that corruption would end, and in some ways, it did. Kibaki's leadership prioritized infrastructure development, free primary education, and the economic recovery. Policy replaced spectacle at the very top. But handout politics did not disappear. It just shifted location. One of the earliest signs of this shift was the parliament itself. During this period, members of parliament repeatedly increased their own pay through extraneous allowances, including entertainment and attendance allowances. As custodians of public funds, MPs awarding themselves such benefits was widely criticized and illogical and a clear abuse of office. Supporters of the increases, however, offered a counter-argument. They argued that without adequate pay, MPs were vulnerable to presidential patronage, a system that had weakened legislation not just in Kenya but across the continent. And indeed, one can argue that a combination of adequate salaries and term limits was responsible for the creation of the Kenya's National Assembly since 2002 as a more independent institution that mattered. Put simply, MPs could no longer be bought as they were a decade earlier. The Constituency Development Fund (CDF) was introduced in 2003, primarily designed to facilitate equitable development at the grassroots level by directing funding projects at the constituency level. In its first 4 years of operation, a total of 24.2 billion shillings was disbursed to constituencies. Funding grew from 1.26 billion shillings in 2003-2004 financial year to 10.1 billion shillings by 2006-2007 financial year. In theory, CDF was developmental, but in practice, it was politicized. Many MPs reportedly used CDF-funded projects to secure political loyalty, influence opinion during the constitutional referendum, and position themselves as personal benefactors rather than custodians of public funds. CDF entrenched the idea that an MP is valuable only if they bring something home. At the same time, there was a noticeable rise in cash distributions in funerals, harambes, and community fundraisers, a practice that continues to date. Handouts had not ended, they had become institutionalized. Still within Kibaki era came one of the darkest moments in Kenya's history, the 2007-08 post-election violence. While violence was heavily influenced by ethnic politics, handouts played a significant role. Years of transactional ethnic politics had conditioned communities to believe that political victory equals material reward and political loss equals exclusion of resources. Over 1,200 people were killed and as many as 350,000 people were displaced. Youth mobilization during this period involved money, food, alcohol, and promises of reward. When the contested election outcome disrupted these expectations, violence erupted. A power-sharing deal between Raila Odinga and Moi Kibaki eventually restored stability and the country registered progress. But elections returned in 2013. A new phase of handout politics began. Under Uhuru Kenyatta, handouts became open, unapologetic, and symbolic. Cash donations were now televised, publicly announced, and defended as generosity. Millions were handed out at church fundraisers, women and youth empowerment forums, and political rallies. The language shifted. This is not bribery, it is helping the people. And this era marked a turning point. Handouts were no longer hidden, and voters demanded cash upfront. And the cost of refusing became political defeat. In the 2017 elections, activist Boniface Mwangi ran for the Starehe MP seat. He chose a different approach. No cash handouts, no token gifts, and campaigning solely on integrity and ideas. The result, he lost overwhelmingly. Mwangi later admitted that voters openly told him, "You talk well, but you don't give us anything." His loss became a study on modern Kenyan politics. Principle without patronage rarely wins elections. As Nyashinsky famously said, "We vote tribe ama real cash, ask Boni." Handouts were no longer just corruption, they had become expectations. During the same period, then Deputy President William Ruto intensified cash donations at church fundraisers. MPs accused these events of turning into campaign platforms for the Tanga political grouping, openly ridiculing President Kenyatta while consolidating grassroots support. By the end of Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency, handouts were no longer occasional political tools. They had become the language of leadership. Under the current presidency, that language has only grown louder. Cash is now routine at rallies, church services, harambees, and even empowerment meetings. President Ruto has been repeatedly documented donating millions to churches, including 20 million shillings in March 2025 to Jesus Winner Ministry, and rejected donations at Soweto Catholic Church in November 2024. And he has been unapologetic about this.
We have absolutely no apologies to make as we give to God.
But while he gives this much, during the Gen Z 2024 protest, he ordered a ban on state officers and public servants from participating in public contributions and fundraising activities, harambees, to curb corruption and align with austerity measures. But what happened later? State officers, including the deputy president, became the people defying this directive.
2 million shillings.
Deputy President Kithure Kindiki and MPs reportedly dished out over 50 million shillings in 1 month, including 30 million shillings in Mount Kenya alone. The source of this money is rarely disclosed. But let's go back to elections and how handouts have made it very expensive. Campaigns are now impossibly expensive. Langata MP Felix Odiwuor, widely known as Jalango, revealed spending 30 million shillings just to secure a party ticket. He claimed presidential campaigns can burn 1.5 billion shillings in days. And while this money dominantly caters for fuel, merchandise, and other things, a portion of it reportedly is for handouts. Election bribery has become so normalized, even in by-elections. In November 2025, election observers reported widespread voter bribery. The result? Poor leadership, corruption, and a cycle where leaders must recover their investment. From pre-colonial redistribution, to colonial manipulation, to independence patronage, and to modern cash politics, handouts have shaped Kenyan leadership for over a century, but the cost has been devastating. Handouts don't just make elections expensive, they ensure that leaders are voted in for the wrong reasons. Receive handouts, receive bad leadership. I'm Eric Mugo, and this is News Diary.